Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Joan Javier Duval, and I welcome you to the Unitarian Church of Montpelier. We are gathered here today to honor and to celebrate the life of Harris Conwell Webster, a father, grandfather, brother, and uncle, a loyal friend and active community member, and a longtime member of this congregation. Today, we form a circle of remembrance and gratitude. We come here as family, as friends, as neighbors, and members of this church. In this moment, we are one community, those seated here in the sanctuary and those holding Harris in their hearts from afar. We especially recognize Harris's family, spanning multiple generations and different states, to gather here in love. Present today are Harris's children, Debbie, Jim, Tom, and Cindy, and their spouses, Charlie, Therese, and Laurel. Harris's grandchildren, Callie, Ben, Maggie, Grant and his fiancée Liz, Abby, and Rebecca. Harris's sister Susan and brother-in-law John and sister-in-law Bev, and Harris's cousins and many nieces and nephews. To each of you and to all those who mourn Harris's passing, we welcome you to this sanctuary and offer our deepest sympathy and heartfelt presence. This afternoon, we remember Harris Webster. We celebrate a life well lived, a life filled with strength and generosity, joy and resilience. And we also come to say goodbye, to honor the ache of absence, and to hold space for our sorrow. We remember Harris across the wide arc of his 91 years of life. The Harris who stood strong and the one who needed care, the man of laughter and games and the man who weathered sorrow. We mourn what his absence now leaves behind, his patient and nurturing presence, his voice among many in a chorus of voices, the relationships that might have grown even deeper with more time. Yet we know that Harris's presence endures. He lives on in the stories that we will tell today and in the ones we carry quietly within us. He lives on in each person here, in the ways that he shaped us, and in the love he gave. Each of you present knew Harris in your own way. To no two people was he exactly the same. He grew, he evolved, he met each person with his unique spirit. And so we bring with us a mosaic of memories of his joy celebrating grandchildren's birthdays and graduations, shared walks on trails and sidewalks, reading his latest poetic composition or commentary on the state of the world, and there were many. These moments and countless others weave together the story of his life. And it is that life, full and rich, deeply human, that we celebrate today. As we begin our service, we light the chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, with these words from John Morgan. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. I invite you to rise and body your spirit for our opening hymn, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. You can find it in the gray hymnal in your pews. It's number 108.
from Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you."
Thank you for that, choir. I am sure that Harris, wherever he is smiling. When Harris and his wife Ellie joined the Unitarian Church of Montpelier in 1998, they were beginning a new chapter of their lives here after retirement. And what a gift that chapter turned out to be for this community and for all who knew him. I first met Harris over 10 years ago, before most people in the congregation knew who I was, or that I was a Unitarian Universalist minister living in Vermont. Harris was part of the church's ministerial search committee that read many applications and interviewed several ministers before recommending me as the candidate for the settled minister position. Just 6 days after I officially began my position in August of 2015, Harris contacted me by phone and then emailed to pull me into the organizing efforts for the annual International Day of Peace to take place the following month. That first email was my introduction to what many of you already knew. When Harris cared about something, he didn't just talk about it, he organized around it. I soon learned of the broad reach of Harris's social, environmental, and global concerns, and I learned that Harris was a thinker and a doer. Through the church's Social Responsibility Committee and Vermont Interfaith Action, Harris worked tirelessly to make our community more just and more livable. He helped lead the campaign to make Montpelier's sidewalks safer and more accessible, especially for seniors and people with disabilities. He co-founded the Montpelier Streetwalkers and the Sidewalk Stewards groups. Were anyone part of those groups? A couple people here. For Harris, sidewalks weren't just pavement, they were pathways to equity. And he even captured this belief in one of his well-loved tankas. It goes like this: taken for granted sidewalks, especially help out the poor, disabled, young, and elderly, infrastructure saints. 7 of Harris's tankas about sidewalks appear in the city's master plan, last readopted in 2017. Over time, Harris grew ever more convinced that real change required getting to the roots of problems. He sometimes felt frustrated that not everyone shared his urgency, but that never stopped him from trying to bring people along. Harris made sure that I was brought into the organizing efforts of Vermont Interfaith Action and got me to serve on the board of VIA by sharing the position with me as a clever way to transition out. In later years, Harris's focus broadened to a global scope. Concerned about the impacts of unfettered economic growth and the existential crisis of climate change, he helped start our congregation's climate action team. Ever the teacher, he donated many books to our climate library. Harris joined the board of Vermont Interfaith Power and Light and worked with them to establish a grant fund in honor of his late wife, Ellie Webster, ensuring that climate action grants would be available to faith communities of every religion and denomination. Harris got behind ethically and morally compelling ideas and then worked to make those ideas a reality, not just out in the world, but within his own personal life. He was a pragmatist, not a pessimist or an optimist. Instead, he engaged the world with hopeful realism. He was a man compelled to follow his ethical compass. I was especially impressed by his commitment to a vegan lifestyle as a personal act to reduce carbon emissions. And as serious as he was about his commitments, something I loved about Harris was that he didn't take himself too seriously. On one visit to Harris in his final days, I arrived while he was eating lunch. The hospice volunteer who was sitting with him told me that he was eating a BLT salad. A BLT salad, I asked him, with bacon? And with a twinkle in his eyes, he nodded yes, and then followed it up with butter pecan ice cream. Harris lived his values deeply, but he also knew how to laugh at himself. As a lifelong teacher, Harris never stopped that teaching role, sometimes through his words, sometimes through his quiet example. And over the years, he offered me both critical and complimentary feedback, always gently and fairly. Having grown up as a PK or pastor's kid, he had discerning eyes and ears when it came to ministry. He showed restraint in offering advice, but he'd let me know when he was particularly impressed by something I said or did. When he told me I'd done a good job on a sermon, he'd always preface it by saying he was known to be a hard grader. After one service last fall, he wrote to tell me that I had received his, quote, highest excellent perfect sermon award over 90 plus years of sermons, end quote. That is an honor I will hold dearly for the rest of my life. Harris reminded us that devotion is not just a feeling, but a practice, a daily way of showing love for the world. He was devoted to his family, devoted to this church, devoted to making life on earth better for all people. May his devotion continue to inspire us today. And we will now hear from Harris's sister Susan, followed by granddaughter Maggie.
Hi, everyone. I was holding it together just fine until Sarah played the piano and the choir sang. I don't know what happened here. That wasn't fair. It was lovely. It's not easy being the last one standing. Our brother Don died 7 years ago, and now Harris. The history is gone, the stories are gone. We can't do a check if what we remember is true or not. If you're lucky, you will have had a brother or a sister like Harris your whole life. I had him for 84 years and 1 day. I'm the only one that knew him as a child. I can describe him as a child, but you're going to recognize him, because that's who he was as an adult, which, Joan, you beautifully described. Harris, more than anyone I know, walked his talk from childhood on. He was 7 and Don was 5 when I was born, so my stories are both family lore and my own experiences. He was born in Miles City, Montana in 1934. 1 year later, they moved to Westfield, Vermont, of all places. They drove their Model T Ford across the country, and at one point, they stopped at a cafe to get some lunch. They went in, and while they were there, Harris fell asleep, little baby, and our mother did something you couldn't do now. He took him out to the car and put him in the car so that he could sleep better there and not have the noise. You can't imagine that today, right? Soon after they were eating, a man came into the cafe and said, "Would the person who put the baby in the wrong car come get him?" We almost lost him then, right? Harris was always curious, and it's just a word that keeps coming up for me about Harris. Both curious and adventuresome. When he was a toddler in Westfield, he was really intrigued with the bee hives that were in the farmers next door, and he wandered over there. It was a painful lesson that they pulled something like 18 stingers out of his back. But that didn't deter him ever. If he wanted to see something, he did it. We moved to Burlington. They moved to Burlington. I wasn't around yet. When he was about 5. And this is when I want to talk a little bit about his social activism, his social consciousness, which you all know more than I do. We were living on Lyman Avenue in Burlington, and he was playing with some little boys, his friends, who said to him, "Don't ever go on that street. There's a really bad lady there who's make bad things happen to you." And he got quite scared by that. One day, he was walking with our mom, and she started down that street. And he said, "I can't go down there. It's too scary. It's too awful." And Mom asked him why. He told her. She took him by the hand, went down to the house, up the stairs, rang the doorbell. An African-American woman answered the door. And my mom said, "I just want to introduce you to Harris. Harris, I want you to meet this person, and we're glad you're in the neighborhood." For Harris, that was quite a lesson. It served him well, as you know, his whole life. It could have been his first aha. I wonder about that. When he was 8th grade, he was the treasurer of the Henry Wallace for President Party. Go figure. 8th grade, normal activity, right? When he was in college, he went to Fisk University. That was during the Jim Crow era. Not an easy assignment. He was a traveler as well as frugal, which we all know. Our dad was the Vermont Congregational Conference minister. Our mom had been a nurse, and I describe her as sort of an unsung hero in that in those days, that was a minister's wife. We didn't have much money, but we had a good family life. We had lots of nice old-fashioned activities that we had. One of the things we did was to take long road trips, which were typically educational in nature, sometimes to see family, long distances. If we found a motel, we couldn't pay more than $7 a room. If it was $8, had to go someplace else. We packed our food, but every morning we had to stop for coffee for our mom. She wanted coffee. And we'd go in, and Harris and Don would both order 4 orders of toast. That was their breakfast. And no waitress believed them. They all challenged that, right? But that's how they traveled, and that's how we had some great trips. As you know, Harris, he was really smart, and he was always seeking wisdom, for lack of a better word. Our dad was often a guest preacher at churches around the state, and Harris was the only one of us, for whatever reason, never asked Don why, Harris was the one that would go with him. And they would talk, they'd have deep conversations about philosophy, religion, life. Harris would critique the sermon. He started that early, Joan. It was interesting, on my last visit where I saw him just before he died, he talked again about those conversations, those opportunities that he had, that the relationship with his father that he had was important in his own spiritual journey. He was quiet, good-natured spirit. His nickname was Sonny Jim. Not the bubbly Sonny, but that nice, peaceful, calm Sonny. As siblings, as hard as it may be to believe, we didn't fight. We really got along well. We'd argue, we'd debate, of course. In our family, we always debated. And we played competitive games. And I was thinking about why was that we didn't fight, and I think it was Harris. Harris, the oldest son, he set the tone for us. Except for one time when Brother Don was very frustrated with Harris and went up and punched him very hard. Harris looked at him quizzically, smiled, and walked away. And Don was left, what do I do now? There's nothing I can do here. He was very kind and attentive to me. We were really close, even though 7 years apart. There was only one thing he ever refused to do for me, and that was I was sick for 2 weeks. And I got hooked on radio soap operas. Loved them. And when I went back to school, Harris was then sick. And I begged him, please, will you listen to Our Gal Sunday or whatever it was? Harris would not do that. Harris could do so many things for me, but not listen to soap operas. He loved music. He sang in the choir from when he was 6. He played Aida, the record, incessantly. It got tiresome. He was in the high school band, and our family used to stand around the piano with our dad playing, and we would sing and harmonize. And that was a really lovely time that we had. On a later story, Mozart Requiem became important to us, both to Harris and me, and there was a tie to our mom with it. And when I saw him just before he died, I brought music to play, and I played the Mozart Requiem, and he sang along, sort of, but he sang along. It was very sweet. Joan, you mentioned resilience. I don't know when he internalized this, but he internalized that life is hard, and it's up to us to figure out what we're going to do about it. He had that optimistic spirit and, again, curiosity. He'd see, how can this happen? He didn't let barriers stop him. When he was in high school, he was in the band, and he was pretty shy, and he had to sell tickets to the band concerts, and that was hard for him. So he made a deal with me. He'd pay me 5 cents for every 25-cent ticket I sold. And it was a win-win, right? I got to help my beloved brother, and he got to sell all his tickets. A more important time was when, after he returned from teaching in Turkey for 3 years after college, he got back just in time for my graduation, which was the perfect gift, since I hadn't seen him in 3 years. He went to Harvard and went to a summer program in terms of education. And unusual for Harris, he didn't do well there. And a professor said to him that he was not suited to be a teacher. And I say, really? Tell the thousands of students in Lansing and England and Japan and Cambodia and India and Montpelier. Just tell them that. Harris didn't even let Harvard stop him. Quite an accomplishment. That's just a little about Harris. He was a gentle, kind soul. He always had a hopeful spirit. He always had that smile and a twinkle in his eye. He wished he had written an autobiography. He had the title, and the title was One of the Lucky Few. I think we here are some of the lucky many who had Harris in our lives. I know I am as a sister. Before I left, this last time, shortly before he died, I said, Harris, it's really hard to say bye. I don't think we're going to see each other again. And he looked at me with a twinkle in his eyes, and he said, we'll see. Is that what you preach here? I also said, Harris, you will always be in my heart. And Harris, you are.
Good afternoon. Many of you called him Harris. Some of you called him Dad, but we called him Grandpa. And he was the most incredible grandpa a kid could ever ask for. Whether you knew him as a loving friend, an honorable father, a dedicated advocate, or the grandpa that gave you ice cream and taught you tennis, we can all agree that his kind, gentle soul made this world a better place. As grandkids, we were lucky enough to feel his love and compassion since the moment we took our first steps, and the lessons he passed on to us will last a lifetime. Although I am the eldest of 6 grandchildren, coming first did not gain me any favoritism. As we all know, favorite was not a common word in Harris's vocabulary. Grandpa was a champion for fairness and equality that carried through in every aspect of his life. I don't think he gave preferential treatment to a single person. Okay, maybe Grammy. As a grandpa, he always made sure everyone got the same size slice of pie, same check at Christmas, and dedicated one-on-one time to each of us on family vacations to share a special activity together. As young kids, he taught us tennis, played catch in the backyard, and sung songs like, "What did Mississippi boys, oh what did Mississippi?" If you haven't heard that one before, she sipped a Minnesota boys, she sipped a Minnesota. He would bring me contra dancing, and as a young girl, I had no chance of keeping up. He would swing me around until I was dizzy, but the joy on his face cured all sense of nausea. A jack of all trades, he encouraged us to sing just as much as he would help us improve our backhands. He taught us to be humble, and he was always there to help his family. No matter how much snow was on the ground, you could count on Grandpa to volunteer to walk the dog. His active lifestyle kept him young and helped him cross the Boulder finish line in 3rd place in his 80-year-old age group. Not only have his shoes touched every sidewalk in Montpelier, they have taken him to distant corners of the globe. As I grew up, I quickly learned how truly inspiring Harris was as a person. Grandpa showed us the power of curiosity and the importance of getting out of our comfort zones to see the world from a different perspective. Grandpa's life experiences taught us it was never too late to try something new. I don't know what's more impressive, whether it be learning Japanese or volunteering as an 83-year-old in Cambodia. My brother and I had the privilege of traveling to Cambodia shortly after Grandpa, and we took his recommendations of which hostels to stay in and which sites to visit. Even at 83, I'm sure he was the coolest volunteer in his group, sharing words of wisdom and learning from everyone he met. Grandpa instilled a sense of adventure and inspired us all to broaden our horizons. He lived a full life, one that touched people near and far. To me, my grandpa was genuinely the best human being that I have ever known. He made everyone around him happier, and if he heard all of the nice things being said about him today, he would humbly accept and then quickly turn it around and say how lucky he was to have family and friends like those around him. The lessons he passed on will continue to spread his kindness, and we strive every day to live a life that Grandpa would be proud of. Treating others with respect, singing at every occasion, taking daily walks, and most importantly, prioritizing family over everything. Grandpa's heart lives on in all of us, and we are better people for it. I will never match Grandpa's poetic grace, but here is a tonka for Grandpa. Worn shoes, well-traveled, sing with joy, ice cream a treat, choose kindness always, lighting lives as he walked by, forever friend, our Grandpa.
Good afternoon. Websters are not short. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Debbie, Harris's eldest daughter. Today, however, I would like to speak to you not only as his daughter, but as his student. As you've heard earlier, a big part of my father's life was as a teacher. From his teaching in Tarsus, Turkey, right after college to his time, which Maggie mentioned, in Cambodia in his mid-'80s, teaching was really in his blood. Not only am I a recently retired teacher myself, I'm the only one of the four of us to have my father in class. While my father probably taught most of you, if you knew him in some way, I actually had him in my world history class. And I think I'm probably the only one here that can say that they had taught in a formal setting. So my father was a social studies teacher, but he loved numbers. And he always had interesting ways of manipulating and using numbers. So what he did for his students was to come up with a point system, somewhat complicated, but an eminently fair point system so you could get whatever grade you would work for. I must have inherited a little of the number sense. He used to joke that I earned the exact minimum number of points to get the A and not one more. He also treated me fairly in that he treated me just like any other student, which I now understand was a very difficult thing to do. And that included when my mother would say, "Harris, how is Debbie doing in your class?" He gave some space to me. He had a great variety in his teaching career. Even when he wasn't teaching overseas, which you've heard about, he had different kinds of ways to teach in the classroom. Through his years, he did team teaching, cross-curricular teaching, and he even taught on television. He had a show called World Understanding. It was a show for middle schoolers all about culture around the world, and it was on educational TV even before PBS, but the precursor of PBS. Now, my brother Jim and I got to be on one of the episodes. It was called Families Around the World, and in part of that episode, he described how punishments could be different in different cultures. During this time, Jim and I both got a spanking, which delighted our first and second grade classes who got to watch us. One class that my father taught when I was there, before and after too, was really the perfect class for him and for his desire to do good in the world. It was a popular class, very popular, called Human Relations. This class started right after the busing crisis in the 1970s to help deal with some racial tension. Now, at the time, I remember thinking it was a lightweight class. It was not taken by serious students. But in retrospect, I realized that that was very narrow-minded of me. In that class, students gained a better understanding of how to appreciate each other and to make the world a better place. Sounds like Harris. Instead of a final exam, the class would work on a community improvement project. One time, that did get him in trouble. After a class had finished their project, a fellow social studies teacher, who happened to also be the basketball coach, was livid with my father that he allowed this tall student named Irvin to climb a ladder to change light bulbs. Didn't he know he could have fallen? After all, Everett's basketball team really needed Irvin, better known to all of you as Magic Johnson. Teaching was in his blood, and he took it seriously. One year, he received the Do or Die for Everett High Award. This was given to a teacher at the end of the year for extreme loyalty to the school. And what earned him this reward? He was biking to school one morning, as he often did, and I think of this biking as a perfect combination of his love of exercise, environmentalism, and frugality. There was an accident. He was fine, but a little shaken and bruised. But I don't think initially he let anyone know. He just went to his first class and started teaching. He was always teaching, even when he was not in school. When I was 13, and Cindy was 5, the boys in between, we took a summer trip to England. In preparation for that trip, we had weekly family British history lessons. With my mother's help, with the handwriting, because that was never his strong suit, he made a chart showing our focus each week. 1 week Anglo-Saxons, 1 week the Normans, and beyond. So much of it I actually still remember. Besides teaching in his beloved Japan, he worked with preschoolers at this church and in India. He volunteered at Montpelier High School early in his retirement, and really it was teaching when he gave those tours at the Vermont State House. As has been said before, he taught both with instruction, but often in his life through example. The lessons my father taught me, both as a teacher and a father, are too numerous to state. But one of his most profound was his last gift to me, the lessons I learned at the end of his life. He always tried to find the positive, and it was no different in death. This is more peaceful than I thought, he shared with me at one point near the end. Despite being weak and bedridden, he didn't despair. He was grateful to the staff, my sister and I, and he truly believed and said that he had a blessed life, that he had been blessed in life. His gratitude and belief in good will live on in all of those of us who knew him.
So I'm Jim, number 2 from Colorado, here with my daughter-in-law Therese and grandkids Maggie and Grant. I'm going to tell some stories. I'm going to mix them up a little bit because some have already been told. So that's what happens when you're number 2. But I also think of my dad as a teacher. He really did care for his students, but he also cared for his fellow teacher. I remember right before I graduated, he sent me a check, and he said, "Take your professor and his family out to dinner to say thank you." And that professor was so thankful. He said after decades and decades of teaching, no student had ever taken him out to dinner. I said, that's Dad. And afterwards, I reported back on the successful evening to my father. He was very pleased. However, I didn't tell him the professor ordered a big steak dinner. I was worried that he might corner him during graduation and tell him a vegetarian entree would have been a better selection for the health of our planet. So even though I didn't have Dad as a teacher, he was my tennis coach, and he was my model UN advisor. So you've heard, Dad was really a world citizen. He loved to travel. And I also have the story about us studying before we went to England. But my memory of the story is when we got to England, when we talked to friends, they said, I bet your kids know English history better than my kids do. And again, being the kids of a world history teacher, he might have been right. We took a trip to Japan as a family. It was really one of the favorite trips that we've had together, because I'd heard about Japan for many, many years. And I'd heard a couple things. The Japanese men liked to drink, and if you didn't drink with them, that would be insulting. And also, when you went to a family's home, you didn't finish all your food, because if you left food on your plate, they thought you were still hungry and they'd give you more food. Well, something you need to know about this story is my dad didn't drink. He was always a member of the Clean Plate Club, always finishing his plate. And he didn't want to insult anybody in a cross-cultural situation. Those are three things he would never do. So I was always curious how he survived in Japan. I had this image of him in sort of a Saturday Night Live comedy sketch where all the businessmen were filling his drink with alcohol, and he was pretending to drink but secretly disposing it in a nearby bonsai plant. And it would go on all night long. He'd be pretending to drink and disposing it, and as the night went on. And the other image of him was, he'd go to a family for dinner, and he would just finish his plate, and they would give him more food, and he'd finish the plate, and he'd give them more food, and it'd go on, and there'd be no food left in the house, and the hostess would have to go out and find more food. Well, so I was really anxious or excited to see my dad in Japan. He was a great host. He took us around. Everybody brought out enormous spreads, and he actually left food on his plate, and of course he told us to do the same. And we didn't eat them out of house and home. And when we had that drink with the dignitaries, he did take a sip, but he explained, no, I don't need to drink anymore. So he had adjusted, he had adapted to his life in Japan. As a tennis coach, he was also a really important role model for me. We really enjoyed playing sports together and following sports and watching sports. One of the things people don't realize is Dad didn't like everybody. He hated the Yankees. For some reason, he just hated the Yankees. I think all those championships when he was growing up scarred him. But at the end of the season, when the Yankees didn't make it to the playoffs, he would smile and get a sigh of relief. But my most memorable sports story with Dad is we were playing tennis, and it finished up, and it was hot and sweaty, so we took a rinse-off shower before jumping in the pool. And I jumped into the pool, and a few minutes later, Dad jumped in. He had forgotten to put on his swimsuit. So I quickly swam over to Dad and said, Dad, you forgot to put on your swimsuit. He said, oh, okay. So he walks back into the locker room and puts on his swimsuit and comes out, and we had a nice laugh about it, but he made me promise never to tell Mom or anybody else about that. And until now, I've kept that promise. Anyway, speaking of Mom, I want to talk about Ellie. I think most of you knew Ellie. After all, she was the most important person in her life, and they complemented each other. Dad led us on hikes up Camel's Hump, and Mom baked pies for dessert. Mom made Dad a lot stronger. At first, Mom was a boater, but Dad learned to love canoeing. In the end, he loved canoeing as much as she did, and they put the canoe on the Prius and travel around Vermont, paddling the lakes and the ponds of Vermont. And they both really loved this community, this church. I want to thank everybody here for all the support and love you provided, my parents. Dad was a Vermonter. He loved this landscape, loved this town, he loved this community, loved Central Vermont. But he didn't love Central Vermont Hospital. 3 years ago, I came back to accompany him to a gallbladder surgery. And after many hours, the doctor came out to me and said the surgery had not gone well, that they needed to transfer him up to UVM by ambulance. So I sat with him, and he was hurting. He asked me, am I dying? And he was really struggling. And he was mumbling. I couldn't make it out at first, but he was sort of mumbling, and I could hear it. It was sort of, apple pie, apple pie. And I could tell he was having a dream or a vision. He was back at our dining room table eating apple pie baked by my mom, or he was back at his childhood dining room table eating apple pie baked by his mom. And so I could tell at that time when it was touch and go, he found his happy place, eating happy pie. It was a real struggle in Burlington. They told me, pulled me out of surgeon, came out of the surgery and told me he wasn't going to make it. And then I said, you don't know Dad. Dad's a really strong individual. So he fought, and he made it back here to his apartment here in downtown Montpelier and eventually to Chestnut Place. And so in those final years, it was a real joy. Again, he started his memoirs, as we've heard about, and we talked about so many things with him. And he always said how lucky he was, how lucky he was. And there's a saying that goes, the good guys finish last. Well, Dad was a really good guy. But in the end, Dad, you, not the Yankees, finished in first place. Dad, I love you.
So I'm the second son, third child, Tom, and I don't know how you speak off the cuff like that so well. I need to write it down, or I'm going to lose it. It is true that each person is unique. However, some people are more unique than others. My dad was one of those truly unique people, even as a Vermonter, and perhaps even with his UU community. He was also perhaps the most ethical person I knew. That is not to say he was without his faults or limitations, but he lived his life with intention. He seemingly made every decision based on a core set of values that included caring for others in the earth, reducing economic inequality, nonviolence, intellectual curiosity, living with moderation, and not being wasteful, and being cheap when it came to himself, but generous in giving to others. He referred to himself as a moderate radical, seeing the need for radical change in society's consumption and growth-driven mindset, and to address climate change, while working to achieve change through moderate means of advocacy and education. As a kid, I saw him as someone who was too quick to compromise, who apologized too easily, and who was a bit of a pushover. However, as I grew, I understood that he was someone who never compromised his values, never needed to apologize for who he was, and would not be pushed off course when pursuing his passion. It goes without saying that the world would be a better place, that he made the world a better place, and the world is a little worse off without him in it. However, we can offset that loss by pledging to ourselves to bring a little of Dad's unique traits into our own lives. I'm sure each of you can think of your own ways to do this, but I have a few suggestions. First, I'll start with an easy one. Go for a walk. But it's not enough just to take a walk. You must say hello to every person you pass and keep a mental list of who and how people respond by race, gender, and age, while also serving as your own Fitbit by counting how many steps you take in 30 seconds and doing the math at the end of your walk to tally your steps. Or you can make a sign with an overly complex and intellectual message about climate change or economic inequality and stand outside your local post office on a weekly basis and engage with passersby. Or perhaps take a sabbatical and travel overseas to volunteer for an organization in a developing country. And if on the way home from this sabbatical, you miss a flight and have to wait until the next morning to continue your journey, don't even consider paying for a hotel room, but sleep in the airport and claim it was perfectly comfortable and was safe because you kept your valuables in your pants. Or play a game of toss and catch. Just make sure you're using an empty shampoo bottle on a windy day. Or make your own soy milk, and so as not to waste anything, make so-called brownies out of the dregs, and truly believe that they were pretty good, which, truth be told, they were not quite as bad as one would think. Or welcome someone recently released from prison into your home to help them stabilize their life as they integrate back in society. Or take your family on a bike ride with a mandatory stop for an ice cream cone halfway through. Or on your next vacation, limit yourself to 1 picture per day and write 1 tanka per day to capture the essence of that day. Or, lastly, read a book about economic inequality or climate change and write a letter to the editor of a small-time newspaper, if it still exists, to elevate seemingly radical ideas in a logical, compassionate, and reasonable manner. Incorporating any of these practices into our lives will not only help make the world a better place, they will honor the legacy of my dad, who is the living embodiment of the bumper sticker mantra, think globally, act locally. It will end the way Dad always ended his family letters, as the original texter, LOL, HGW, GTP, and LKN, which of course means lots of love, have good weeks, greet the people, and love know-nothings.
So I am the fourth and final one, I promise. There's no one after me. I am Cindy. And just to let you know, in the back of your program, you might have noticed there was a meditation, and I requested that to be put there. So I brought mementos with me and my sister. We spent the last week together with my dad, which was very special. And I have my meditations I read occasionally, and that's the meditation that came up on the day he died. And so after he died, I read that to him, and I shared that at his burial in the Green Place. So my parents believed in equality. That was something that was very important to them. And so like a good teenager, I exploited that situation. My brother Tom had got to go to Quebec with the French club, and that wasn't available to me my year. So I told my parents they owed me a trip. And I wanted to make sure that they took care of me as the fourth child. And it took a little while. They thought about it for a second, and then they agreed to let me go on a trip. So before I went off to college, which was the perfect time for me to have a little time to explore and get ready for that experience. I'm not the best driver. Certainly at 18 was not very comfortable. So my father drove me out and waited around while I had this trip. I live in Michigan. I still live in Michigan. And we went up to Mount Marcy and we walked around and hiked around the Adirondacks for a few days with, I believe, the Sierra Club. And he waited for me and picked me up from Lake Placid, and we drove home. And I realized pretty quickly he had injured himself. He had pulled his sciatic nerve, and he was in pretty deep pain. He knew I wasn't a very confident driver, so I'd offered to drive, but he said, no, I'll take care of it. And we made it back to that trip. 4 years later, last 2 years of my college experience, my parents lived in Japan. But my parents agreed. They knew it was important to me. They flew back. My father hadn't finished his teaching obligations, but he flew back for my graduation. And in a quiet moment while we were walking around the campus, we were starting to talk about that trip. And he said, you know, it was really hard for me. Not just the pain. He's one, if you know him, he handles pain differently than anyone I've ever experienced before. But he said, it was really hard for me. It's the first time I realized my body was letting me down. It was the first time I realized I'm no longer a young man, and that was so difficult for me. And as a daughter, I'm sitting there and realizing, yes, I've been an adult for 4 years. It is the first time someone treated me like an adult, and it was the first time I felt, I'm an adult. He shared something with me that he never would have shared with me as a child, a difficulty he was experiencing, something that was a challenge for him. And I had the luck of having that happen to me with, I'm a librarian, if I'm not sure if you know that, but I'm a school librarian. And my second job, I went to talk to my director about something, and he said, you're the librarian, I trust your experience. It was the first time I felt like a librarian, but it was the first time someone had treated me. You're the professional. That's something my father offered all of us. I knew my mother loved me because she worried about me. That worry was something I knew was her proof of her love for me. I knew my father loved me because he had faith in me. He always told us, I have faith that you can handle this situation. I have faith in you. That faith extended to us individually as people, but that faith extended to the world and their ability to deal with difficult situations. His idea that we have it within us as humans to take care of difficult things. So I want to remind everyone, even though we have lost him, that faith he had in us will never leave us. That faith he had in the world to handle difficult things is going to be with us forever. And I will always have that with me in my heart, and I'm blessed by that.
Let us hold these remembrances that have been shared alongside the silent memories in our hearts with a moment of quiet gratitude. And if you would join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, who is our companion also in times of death, be with all who gather here in this hour of celebration and sadness. Help us to recall that we come into the world in mystery, and we go away the same. Give us the strength to feel the blessing of connection to Harris, to Ellie, and to all those who have gone before. Connection to all those present here, and to all whose lives were touched by Harris's life. Let us feel hope enough to honor the gifts of life, even in these somber days. Spirit of life, be with all those gathered here, all of Harris's family and friends. Keep them open to feeling the love and wisdom that remain for them. Love that is born and renewed in the world again and again, and wisdom that grows and deepens over time. May we carry forward Harris's kindness, his curiosity, his generosity of heart, and his spirit of service. And may Harris know peace. May all those who love him find comfort in their memories and peace in the days to come. Blessed be. Amen. I invite you now to join in our closing hymn. Harris, of course, loved to sing with others, and so let our voices join together now into beautiful song. Let us sing together This Little Light of Mine. It's number 118 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit.
I'm gonna let it shine.
As we close this service of memory, a service of celebration, let our hearts fill with gratitude for the life of Harris Webster. May we honor his spirit in the days to come in all of the ways that Jim mentioned, through honest words, thoughtful service, grounded wisdom, and a little playfulness too. We now extinguish the flame of our chalice, but we carry with us its warmth, just as we carry the presence of Harris in our stories, in our actions, and in the spaces that he once so fully inhabited. Following the service, you are very warmly invited to share in food and conversation downstairs in the vestry.